Happy summer to you, my Northern Hemisphere Color Quest friends. This is Margaret Byrd, and I'm so happy to have you here this August in the Pacific Northwest. Last week, we took a look at all of the dye flowers that I am growing in my very small potted plant space. And today, I'd like to start snipping some of those flowers and seeing what we might be able to do in the way of an echo print on paper. So many of you out there are interested in how natural color might work with paper, and guess what? It does. So today, I thought it would be kind of cool to see if we can't create some really vivid prints from the flowers that I'm growing in my garden. So as you know, I have chosen dye flowers for my very limited space to be flowers that I know do some pretty incredible things in the way of either dye for the dye pot or for botanical printing. Now, pickings today are pretty slim for some of them. However, we'll grab what we can and see how they might work with a very simple steam technique that I'm hoping will give us some fairly clear prints. So here you have the star, Coreopsis. I have got a lot of it, so picking this today will be wonderful. I've got some that have this beautiful red interior, some that don't, and we know that these print well. I'm also going to grab one of these African daisies. Haven't used it in anything except a pounding technique, so we'll be curious to see what color we might be able to get on paper with that one. I was really excited for my sulfur cosmos. I have just one today. I have a little tiny yellow one over here that I might be able to also sample from. The rest of them have just lost their petals. Flowers come and go, but we do have quite a few getting ready to pop. My Black-eyed Susans, or Rebecca, I only have two, but I'm going to go ahead and cut one of them for today's, as well as take some of the leaves, because we can get some prints of the leaves as well with most of these flowers, and they can make a really pretty addition. I have a flower or two of these really pretty marigold, so we'll cut some of those, and then we might as well take a flower or two of this geranium as well as the leaves and see what we get there. I think I'll take some of these leaves from the marigold too, because they're a really nice shape. And I'm really excited about this one. The Black Knight Scabiosa or Pincushion can really make a beautiful print. We'll take some of their leaves as well. Oops, look at that. Save it. And I mentioned last week I have these other Pincushions. Probably bring some color, I don't know what though. So we'll take a few of those. So I have my basket of cut flowers and greenery, and now I'm going to show you all the different supplies that you're going to need. Of course, there are variations of what I'm showing you, but this is what I'm going to do. In full disclosure, I've never done this before, so this is kind of an exciting experiment for me. So here are the flowers in the greenery. I think I have 8 different kinds, so I'm going to try to make 8 different pieces. I'm going to need the paper. Now the paper I have here is watercolor paper, and I've cut them to fit the pieces. Thank you, Devin. Got to use these kids trivets. I need something to be able to put the flower and paper in between so that it's tight with the contact. So I'm going to use these to do that so I can keep the paper flat. I'm going to need some pieces of cotton, just spare fiber, something that's a little absorbent. I'm going to be placing this on either side to protect the paper and hopefully pick up some of the moisture because we're trying to get a nice sharp print on here. And once I make it, I'm going to need to bind it. And I'm going to use these big clips just because it's easy, but you can also use rubber bands or string, whatever it is that you need to tie it tight, because as you know with echo printing, we need to have a nice tight contact. Now to prepare the paper, since this is a plant-based fiber, we're going to pre-treat it with a mordant, and that mordant is going to be aluminum acetate. Now I save all of my aluminum acetate after I use it, and I use the exhaust to start the next one. But what I'm gonna wanna do is use about 10% weight of fiber. So I'm going to weigh my paper and get a sense of what I've got. But I can tell you right now that this aluminum acetate's already been prepared at about 15%. So I should be getting enough. Then I'm going to need some kind of a surface to be able to put my paper in to treat it with the mordant. And this will be a short, just a minute soak. And then we're going to use some towels just to dry off some of the excess from the paper itself, because we don't want it to be wet in any excess way. Again, because our print will have the potential to run. And then we're going to be using something to lift it off the bottom of our steam pot. And I have a pot here with a lid I'm going to use. I like this lid because I can see through it. So let's get going on this. Now, as you know, with botanical printing, we can use steam. We can also simply immerse it in hot water. Because I'm trying to get a really sharp print, I'm going to be using steam because we want to have as little water on the paper itself in order to avoid it turning into a beautiful watercolor. If it does, it does, and that's okay. So let's treat our paper first. So I'm just going to weigh the paper out of curiosity. For these 8 prints, I actually have a little over 100 grams of weight, which means I would be using about 10 grams of aluminum acetate. If you don't have aluminum acetate, you can do this without pre-treating, or you could use something like alum, which you might have in your spice cabinet, something that's super easy to get a hold of. It's not quite as strong as aluminum acetate in terms of how it interacts with cellulose fiber like paper or plant-based fiber, but a little bit of a mordant of this kind will always help you. Of course, if you want to work with a tannin, you could use a gallo tannin as a pre-treatment that has a very light color, or you could use another tannin base that then will leave probably more of a yellowish color, like myrobalan or pomegranate skins. All of these are just ideas that you can use to add a little more binding. Now, of course, if you wanted to, you could also use soy milk. That is a great protein binder for all kinds of fibers, including paper. So if you have unsweetened soy milk at your disposal, that's another option that you could use to add that binding effect in hopes that it's going to help that natural color stay on the paper itself. All right, we're just going to add some of that aluminum acetate. Don't need a lot, just enough so I can soak the paper for, I don't know, maybe a minute. So we'll start off with that, and we'll just do one piece here into the aluminum acetate. And unlike fiber, we're not going to worry about having this sit for a long time. Like I said, maybe a minute. Put another piece in here. Maybe turn them over. There are 2 sides to watercolor paper, you can use either side. One is rough. I'm going to use the rough side. It tends to be a little bit more absorbent, I find, if it has some tooth, but you can use either one. Now when I'm ready to take them out, I'm going to put them onto a towel and we're just gonna pat it dry so that it's not too wet. And then we can move on and add some more pieces in to start soaking. I'm going to finish that up. I am using 2 pieces for every design that I'm going to make because I'm going to be sandwiching them in between, and I want to have the opportunity to potentially get 2 different prints. As you can imagine, there's a top side and a bottom side to both flowers and leaves, and we'll be getting a capture of both of those with each one of these prints. So once the paper has been prepared with its aluminum acetate mordant, then I can start building my designs. All right, since we know that Coreopsis is such a great printer, I'm gonna start my first one with this. I have several of these cut. I'm just going to design them onto the piece of paper with their greenery as well. So here's one of my tiles. You can use wood, you can use anything that's heat resistant. I'm going to cover the first piece here, the top layer, with this piece of cotton. It's just going to absorb, hopefully, any extra condensation that comes on. I'm going to put my first piece of paper down. I am going to do it with the bumpy side up, and I've got my second piece ready to go. When I do that, I will be flipping that, putting that on top like this. So let me go ahead and start designing with flowers. I'm not going to be too picky about this, and I'm going to try to get the flowers so that the petals are facing one side so that we get a top and a bottom. Might press it a little bit. I have to try to do this with one hand, which is always fun. Try to get these like this. Maybe have it coming off a little bit. And I do want to get some differences here. Let's see. Something like this, maybe. Put one more. That one's a little rough around the edges. So we'll see what we get with that one. Even including some of these in the design. Something super simple. Here's another one. So many. Actually, you know what? I'm going to replace this one with that one because that one's in a little bit better shape, I think. So play around with your design. You know what you like. I don't typically do things realistically, so I always struggle a little bit with this kind of a design, but we'll try that out. Then I'm going to take my other piece of paper. I'm going to put it on top, press it down, and then put the piece of fiber back over the top here. Again, this is to try to absorb some of that moisture. And I can put my top piece of tile on top there. Got a nice little sandwich. Thank you, Devin and Mason. All right, let me bind those together. All right, now I'm just going to put a little bit of water in the bottom of the pot, put the steam basin in so that I can raise it up out of the water. And once it gets to a nice rolling steam, I will put the bundled tile into the pot. I'm only going to let it sit there for about 5 minutes. And then I'm going to take it out, let it cool a little bit. While I'm doing that, I'm going to go ahead and start building all the other ones. In the paper, I only have the 2 pieces of tile, so I can only do one at a time. Now, I could build multiples up as long as I was putting that piece of fiber in between, or if I wanted to put some paper in between, like a barrier paper, for example, parchment paper or something like that, just to provide a barrier between those 2, and then I could stack those one on top of the other. I'm not going to do that in this particular video, only because I want to try to see what each one of those flowers will bring in the way of a really crisp print. But know that you could stack them one on top of the other as long as you have something in between to try to protect it from bleeding into the other piece of paper. So let's get working on that. I have taken the first one out, that's the Coreopsis, just 5 minutes. I let it cool because it's quite hot, so be careful. Make sure that you are not going to burn yourself with the steam or touching the ceramic tile if that's what you're using. Just be careful. I've already removed the clips. I'm just going to lift it off and we'll see what we got. Wow. Oh my goodness, that is gorgeous. Oh, okay, let's look at the other side. Okay, I'm gonna gently pull these off. Wow, look at that. So beautiful. I'm impressed. Have to say, Coreopsis, you never disappoint. Look at that. We have 2 very distinct prints. All right, we're gonna hang these to dry and we will build the next one. Let's see how the Cosmos does. Okay, you get the picture. I'm gonna go ahead and finish up going through that process, putting it in for 5 minutes, letting it cool, maybe 5-10 minutes, and then taking it out and doing it again and again. Don't wanna bore you with that repetitive process. Light is also going down, so trust that I'm gonna work through this tonight, and tomorrow we'll take a look at all of the results. decided to put the Pincushion Black Knight Scabriosa back in because I know they're great flowers for printing. I just didn't get much. And I think, you can see some's coming through here, that just wasn't giving some of these enough time. I mean, that is so much nicer. So you may have to adjust. Look, I even got some of that light blue Pincushion. Much nicer. I'm so glad I decided. I think I put it in for like another 10 minutes. And yeah, that definitely made a difference. So, let's see. Yep, definitely. Nice. Pretty. All right, everything is dry and has actually been sitting for a few days. So let's take a look at the results and let me know what you think. There they are. Let's start off with Coreopsis. Definitely the star. Look at some of those prints. They're just remarkable. And you can see the areas where they got a little too wet and they bled. So it's really about absorbing that extra condensation that allows you to get these really crisp prints. And then I just love the way the stems look. It's so beautiful. And then look at these. These are the Sulfur Cosmos, also absolutely exquisite. There's the orange and the yellow, so pretty. And then, wow, look at the leaves here. I got these beautiful purple and yellowish, just hints of a print, and they're absolutely stunning. The yellow Marigold did fine. They were quite thick of a flower, and I think they just weren't pressed probably tight enough, but I did get some pretty purples in the center. And you know, yellow and purple as opposites on the color spectrum look nice, very faint in the leaves. Then the next tier, I'm gonna say, this was the geranium. I'm not really that surprised. It was also quite thick, but I kind of like how it turned out. We've got some little flecks in here that look really nice. And then just this sort of outline, actually. It looks like all of the dye spread out, and it just came out as a really beautiful abstraction, and that color is amazing. The Rudbeckia, or Black-Eyed Susan, I did have to do these twice, and they needed longer in the steam. I do love how it's just a hint of a leaf, and not every part of these petals came out. I think it's really pretty and very subtle, but it did require more time. I think these thicker flowers do actually need more than 5 minutes in the steam. I would say I probably gave these 10 to 15. This is the African Daisy. And although I didn't get much in the way of the foliage, maybe because the flowers again were too thick, I can just see a hint of it there. It would be really nice if that had come through, but the flowers themselves, I think, are exquisite. The color and the fact that we have these tiny little dots, it's just super soft and very, very pretty. And then finally, the Pincushion, or Scabiosa, both the Black Knight and those lighter blue ones. I had to do these twice. I took them out. I barely had any color. I had almost nothing of these, but I put them back in, and when I did, I caught everything these hints of the leaves and the stems, and then I got these beautiful contrasting blues to the very bright purples of the Scabiosa. So I have to say, even though I'm an abstract artist, dang, these are pretty, and imagine what you can do with them. I really loved how they turned out, and they have a really nice combination of realism to them and a crispness, but also that sort of lovely watercolor effect. I don't know how I'm going to use them. I'll probably just keep them, but know that this is a great way, if you work with paper, to work on some botanical printing. All right, there are more flowers in my pots now, so I would like to harvest again for next week's video. So I hope you will join me. I think we should work another week on paper, and let's see what kind of prints we can make with these same flowers using a hammer. Have a great week, and I'll see you next Friday. Doggy. No, doggy.